Happy New Year's Eve, everyone. This is Annie White from Houston, Texas, with another Annie Story Time. Well, this story time is a fairy tale that I wrote called Lorelei. This is Lorelei. She has long, beautiful, flowing red hair and beautiful, dark, emerald green eyes and lips as red as rose petals. This is the cast of characters in my story. This is my fairy tale that I'm going to read to you called Lorelei. It's the only fairy tale that I wrote in all my storybooks, so I hope you enjoy it. These are the characters in Lorelei. This is Lorelei, who I just introduced you to. She's a beautiful princess in the kingdom of Ambrosia. Her parents are King Gordon and Queen Jeanette, and they live in a beautiful kingdom in a castle in Ambrosia on the top of the hill. This is Prince Fontaine. He lives in a beautiful kingdom of enchantment. His parents are King Fagin and Queen Nancy. Lorelei is the only daughter of the king and queen, and Fontaine is the only prince, the only son of King Fagin and Queen Nancy. This is a tiny village called Seaman's Reef, where there are fishermen and sailors. Fontaine has secretly been living at Seaman's Reef for the last year, and nobody knows that but him and his parents. These are the women and the wives of the fishermen of Seaman's Reef, and this is the evil sorceress, Madame Zircon. So now we begin my fairy tale, Lorelei. And as all fairy tales, once upon a time. Once upon a time, in a beautiful kingdom of Ambrosia, there lived a beautiful princess, and her name was Lorelei. Everyone in the kingdom loved her, and she was the only daughter of King Gordon and Queen Jeanette. Now, Lorelei, for the most part, loved being a princess, but she wanted to be someplace more than anywhere in the world, and that was down by the ocean, down by the cove, to daydream. She loved to go down the hill away from the kingdom and go to a little cove by the ocean in a lagoon and sit and daydream. That was her favorite place to be in the whole world. And she went there secretly every day before sunset and returned before nightfall for the last 4 years. And no one knew that, not even King Gordon and Queen Jeanette. So every day after she finished all her princess duties, she would venture out to the cove, take her royal clothes, put on peasant clothes, take her crown and tiara off, and she would look just like a normal peasant girl. And she would go down to the cove, by the lagoon, by the ocean, and sit and dream. So one day while she was down by the cove, she noticed a very strange woman with dark, alluring, mysterious eyes and raven long black hair and pale skin in brightly colored clothes. And the woman was gathering rocks by the seashore and putting them into a fringed bag. Now, Lorelei thought this was very strange, but being the polite princess that she was, she went up to introduce herself to the woman. "Pardon me, my name is Lorelei. I just noticed you're putting those rocks in that bag. Why are you doing that?" The woman looked at her with her dark, mysterious eyes and replied, "Well, my dear, I am Madame Zircon, Queen of the Gypsies. These are not rocks, my dear. These are wishing stones for my spells." Lorelei looked at the gypsy and said, "Spells? You cast spells?" Madame Zircon glared at her and replied, "Yes, my dear, I cast spells." Lorelei also wondered, did the gypsy cast wishes? She wanted her most secret wish to be by the lagoon near the ocean. So she asked the gypsy, "Pardon me, but do you grant wishes as well?" Madame Zircon looked at her Yes, my dear. Yes, my child. I do indeed. I grant wishes. Do you have a wish? Lorelei looked at her and decided to tell her her story. She trusted the gypsy. Yes, I'm Lorelei. I'm a princess. I live in a beautiful kingdom of ambrosia. But I don't like being a princess all the time, so I come here every day before nightfall to sit by the cove and the lagoon and the ocean and just dream. I wish I could stay here all the time. That's all Madame Zircon had to hear. She looked at Lorelei very cunningly. A princess, you say? Well. So you'd like to be near the ocean all the time. I think I can help you with that, my sweet. And with that, Madame Zircon opened up her Fringed bag and took out her stones and placed them on a huge rock, and then took peacock feathers and waved them over the stones, and words appeared on the stones like magic. And as she did this, she began to chant this incantation. Princess fair, I give to thee the spell I cast to hear your plea. No longer in your kingdom you shall dwell. Your legs I replace with this fish tail. Lorelei, in horror, looked down at her legs. They had completely disappeared. Instead, there was a shiny, scaly fish tail. She was a mermaid. You horrible, wicked, wretched woman, what have you done to me? I'm a mermaid. Madame Zircon just looked at her and grinned. Yes, my dear. I only gave you what you wanted, your most secret wish in all the world. Next time, be careful what you wish for. As Madame Zircon began to depart, she put her stones back into the bag, put her peacock feathers back into the bag, and started to leave. Wait, before you go, please, change me back, don't leave me like this. I'm a princess, I have to go back to my kingdom, I have to go back to Ambrosia, please change me back. I don't want to be a mermaid. Madame Zircon looked at her and began to chant this incantation and this spell. Princess fair, I give to thee, now a mermaid of the sea. Only true love's kiss can break the spell. Give you back your legs for this fish tail. And with that, she disappeared into a cloud of blue smoke and was gone forever. Lorelei was horrified. She didn't know what to do. True love's kiss. I don't have a true love. I don't have anyone. No, please, come back. She didn't know what to do. She had no true love. She couldn't return to the kingdom. Nobody knew she went to the cove in secret. She was left by the lagoon to be a mermaid forever. So all she could do was dive into the deepest part of the ocean and swim down to the bottom of the sea and find a giant clamshell to snuggle up for the night and go to sleep. She would try to think about what to do tomorrow. She had to become a princess again, but she didn't know how. Now on the other side of the hill, there was a beautiful castle in a beautiful kingdom called Enchantment, and that's where Prince Fontaine lived. But for the last year, he secretly lived at Seaman's Reef, the tiny fishing village, with all the sailors and the fishermen and their wives. He told his parents he would return to his kingdom on his 21st birthday, which was coming up, and then he would become a prince again. Fontaine at Seaman's Reef. These are the women of Seaman's Reef. These are the sailors and the fishermen. Now it was Friday, and every Friday in Seaman's Reef, the fishermen would go out into the boat, cast their fish and their nets into the water to catch fish. They went every Friday to get their bounty of fish and come home and return before nightfall every Sunday. And being Fontaine was a prince, no one at Seaman's Reef knew that he was of royal blood. So he just fit in with all the other sailors and fishermen. So they went out on Friday. The wives kissed and waved them off for their safe journey. They were sitting in the boat, casting their nets out, waiting for the fish to come in when they could return Sunday to go home so the women could fry up the feast and all the village could have a wonderful meal. Everything was wonderful Friday. The next day, Saturday, the wind was calm, the sea was very quiet, and they were waiting for Sunday to come so they could bring their bounty in and return home back to Seaman's Reef, the tiny fishing village. Come Sunday, they were getting ready to leave when all of a sudden, before they could get their nets into the boat with their bounty of fish that they had caught, the wind started to shift. The rain started to pour down. The waves were crashing all on the rocks. The waves were getting very violent. And all of a sudden, their boat capsized and went into the water. All the men were trying to hold on for dear life. They were trying to stay on deck. Some of them were thrown overboard. The men who were on deck spent hours trying to pull the men in the water to safety. Finally, after hours of getting everyone back on the boat, they all were saved. All but one. That was Fontaine. He was somewhere floating in the icy, freezing, cold waters. The men searched and searched and searched and searched hours for Fontaine before they had to return home. They couldn't find him anywhere. It was getting dark. They had to return back to Seaman's Reef. So they had no choice. They had to leave. They had to leave Fontaine floating in the icy ocean. They knew that he had drowned and he had died. When they got back to Seaman's Reef, they told everyone of Fontaine's demise. Everyone was heart-stricken that they had lost their beloved Fontaine, and no one could tell King Fagin and Queen Nancy in the kingdom of enchantment that their beloved son had died, because no one knew he was a prince. So the king and queen had no way of knowing they had lost their beloved son forever. And back in the other village of Ambrosia, everyone was frantically looking for Lorelei because she never returned home. When she left the castle, she never came back, and no one knew to search in the lagoon because no one knew that the evil Madame Zircon, the evil gypsy, had turned Lorelei into a mermaid. Night fell. It was getting cold and chilly. The ocean was getting icy. Suddenly, Fontaine felt this tugging. Something was pulling him and pulling him to dry land, pulling him to safety. He didn't know what it was. He just knew that he had been saved. After Lorelei had pulled Fontaine to safety, she dove into the ocean and disappeared. The next morning, Fontaine awoke. He was tired and oh so hungry. He had slept on the sandy lagoon on the beach all night long. He didn't know what had saved him. He just knew that he had been pulled to safety, and he was so grateful. All of a sudden, he turned around and he saw something peering at him through the waves in the water. He saw that it was a mermaid. "Are you the one that saved me?" inquired Fontaine. "Yes, I am Lorelei. I could not let you drown. I saved you." "I am most grateful. I am Fontaine. You saved my life. But you are a mermaid?" No, said Lorelei. "I was not born a mermaid. An evil, wicked, horrible gypsy turned me into one." "A gypsy? A gypsy turned you into a mermaid? Inquired Fontaine. Yes, she cast a spell on me. A spell? Why? Said Fontaine. So Lorelei began to tell Fontaine what had happened to her. She began to tell her story. Fontaine was furious. He couldn't believe that Madame Zircon had turned Lorelei into a mermaid. Lorelei had no way of getting back to her kingdom, and Fontaine was not going to leave her in the ocean by herself. As they talked more and more and got to know each other, Fontaine found that he was growing very fond of her. And within hours, he had decided he was falling in love with her. So he gently leaned over and kissed her. All of a sudden, Lorelei's legs appeared. Her fishtail was gone. She had her legs back. True love's kiss had broken the spell. They were so happy, they danced around the beach. They rejoiced. And Fontaine took Lorelei back to her kingdom. And when they returned, there was a huge celebration. And Fontaine and Lorelei were united as prince and princess and were married in Fontaine's kingdom of enchantment. Everyone was so happy to have the prince and princess back again. They all united as one. And they all became together. On the day of Fontaine and Lorelei's wedding, Lorelei had decided she wanted one last look at the lagoon where she had been turned into a mermaid by the evil Madame Zircon. So she and Fontaine rented a boat and took a voyage down to the lagoon one more time for one last look. As they went to the lagoon that day, it just so happens that they saw Madame Zircon back gathering more stones for her spells. Fontaine was so furious at what he had done to his princess. He started to confront her, so he drew his sword and ran out to the rocks and the watery ocean, where Madame Zircon was collecting her stones. All of a sudden, he thrust her sword at her and was about to throw her into the ocean. And Madame Zircon started to put an evil spell on him, but before she could mutter her first words, Fontaine threw her back up against the rocks, crashing into the waves, sinking further down, down, down. Madame Zircon sunk lower and lower into the ocean and was never seen again. Back at the beautiful kingdom of enchantment, King Gordon, Queen Jeanette, King Fagin, Queen Nancy, and everyone had a huge celebration for the prince and princess. And everyone was happy that the kingdom was back in order and they had found their beloved Fontaine and their beloved Lorelei. And Fontaine and Lorelei lived in the kingdom of enchantment, but spent their summers at Fontaine's favorite place, Seaman's Reef, but lived in his kingdom as a proper prince and princess should do, and they both lived happily ever after. Now, the moral of the story, like all good fairy tales have, be sure it's what you really want before you make the wish you do. Then if it is the one you dream, hope it does come true. And that quote was written by me, Annie White from Houston, Texas. All quotes and stories are written by me. And the summary of the story is, be happy with who you are. Be satisfied and content. Not all of us can find our true love and live happily ever after with our prince. And that was written by me. So I hope you enjoyed my fairy tale, Lorelei, on this New Year's Eve. And this is Annie from Annie's Storytime saying I'll see you again next time. So as always, be happy, enjoy life, and keep reading. Bye for now.